Hey guys, this is Mike Mahaffey, the old bastard BJJ guy, here for BJJ Mental Models. Back in my day, we had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to get to the academy just to learn some crappy technique from a random purple belt. You kids have it so easy because now you can just subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium and get tons of great audio courses to learn new techniques, enhance your mindset, and entertain yourself. You can even get personalized rolling reviews from some of your favorite BJJ Mental Models coaches, including me. It's like having your own seminar, you spoiled little whippersnappers. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium right now, get off my lawn, and go train.
Hey, welcome to BJJ Mental Models. I'm Steve Kwan. BJJ Mental Models is your guide to a conceptual and intelligent jiu-jitsu approach. And in this mini episode, I want to talk about the concept of position over submission. This is probably one of the most commonly taught mental models in the entire sport of jiu-jitsu. All over the world, at gyms of all different types, people will tell you position over submission. It sounds great, it sounds intuitive, but I want to spend a bit of time unpacking it a little bit and to also point out where the counterexamples are, because there are times when you might prefer submission over position. For most people, in most cases, it is better to hold a good position than to abandon all of that in the hopes of getting a submission. And there's several reasons for that. First of all, if you can maintain a position, then you can always re-attack if your first submission attempt fails. The second reason is because better positions lead to better submission opportunities. It is easier to submit someone if you're in a better position than if you're in a poor position. Another reason is because losing position means that your submission opportunities decrease. Like I said, it's hard to attack with a submission from a poor position. And of course, if you lose a position, you are now opening yourself up to your opponent's submissions. It will be easier for them to submit you if they're in a dominant position. For me, when I'm rolling, my goal is always to reduce the chaos as much as possible and make the fight predictable. One of the reasons why I want to have a dominant position is because I can make things much more predictable for myself if I am in such a position. Let's take an example. If you and I are both standing up in front of each other, anything could happen. I have no idea what you're going to do if we're both standing. Also, if one of us is in guard, there's so many options that the other person can do. It makes it challenging for me to really predict what's coming next. Compare that to a more dominant position like mount. If I'm mounted on you, I can be relatively certain about what you're going to do. There's only a handful of things you can really do to try to get out of that position. I can also be relatively safe from submissions because it will be very hard for you to submit me if I'm mounted on top of you. So that's one less thing that I have to worry about. When we go up the positional hierarchy and we go from guard to side control to mount or to back control, one of the main benefits to advancing your position is you are increasing the odds of your success. The better the position you're in, the easier it will be for you to get submissions, to defend submissions, and to predict what's going to happen next. So really, position is about predictability, and that's why position over submission is so important. If I attempt a submission on you and I'm not careful, I could risk losing the position. If I lose the position, I am now in a much weaker state to attack you going forward. A very common example I bring up here is attempting to score an armbar from the mount. If I am mounted on top of you and I see an opportunity for an armbar and I swing off to the side and try and get it, but I lose it, now you're probably going to wind up on top. And so not only have I lost the armbar, but I've lost the opportunity to attack you, because when I'm on bottom, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to attack you than when I was mounted on top of you. This is why good players do not dive for submissions. And what I mean by that is sacrifice the position in the hopes of getting a submission. A good player will attack a submission if they're relatively certain that they can get it, and if they're relatively certain that they can hold the position. So again, back to the example of arm bars from mount. I will only try to finish someone with an armbar from mount if I am really certain that I'm going to get it. I do not pivot and fall to the side unless I already have that armbar locked up. In fact, it's very common for good grapplers to finish the armbar before they even spin to the side and fall over, or maybe they even stay on top of the person and finish the armbar from there. That's an example of holding the position instead of abandoning it in favor of a submission opportunity. So my advice here is when you are in a good position, if you see the opportunity for a submission, you have to weigh the odds. What are my chances of really actually getting this? If you feel like it's 50-50, it could go either way, you probably don't want to attempt the submission unless you're sure you can hold the position. And that's an important distinction because some submissions are easier to attempt without losing the position. Let's talk again about mount. If I try to Ezekiel choke you from mount, that is a relatively low risk submission for me as the person playing mount, because if I fail, I'm probably still going to have mount. Whereas other submissions like the armbar can be a bit riskier because if I fall off to the side, I run the risk of losing the position. So you always want to think to yourself, okay, if I'm going to attempt this, what's the downside to me? Do I stand to lose the position? And I often tell people, if you have multiple different submission opportunities and one of them has a lower risk of losing the position, you probably want to favor the option with that lower risk. Now, with all of this in mind, there are times when you may want to prefer submission over position. The big one is when the rule set dictates that is a better way for you to win. And where this could happen is if the rule set doesn't really favor position, but it does favor submission. The other situation is where you're down on points, you're running out of time, and you're going to lose the match unless you close it out with a submission. These are cases where you might want to take that risk, abandon the position because the submission is more viable to you. So position over submission is also subject to the rule set that we play under. There may be times when it doesn't always apply. However, generally speaking, in terms of overall grappling effectiveness, I mean, if you were in a street fight, for example, I would prefer to hold the position and keep myself safe and keep the fight predictable than to abandon all of that because I see the opportunity for a submission that I might not get. These days, I will only attempt a submission if I am sure that I can either get that submission or I can hold the position. So there's a quick explanation of this classic concept of position over submission. I hope that is helpful. I hope I've also illustrated that there are times when it doesn't apply. In the next mini episode, I'm going to expand on this a bit and talk about a variation of this concept that Rob Bernanke has introduced called alignment over position. He sometimes also says alignment over everything, but I will explain that in the next episode. In the meantime, if you want more of this, BJJMentalModels.com is where everything we make lives. You can get all of our podcast episodes, all of our mini episodes, our newsletter, and our database of mental models for Jiu-Jitsu, all completely free, as well as signing up for BJJ Mental Models Premium. I'll put a link in the show notes, but you can also just type it in, BJJMentalModels.com. I look forward to seeing you there, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.